Hi guys, this is your girl Wakeji Kamore and welcome to Reflections by Wakeji Kamore. We are currently going through the book of First Samuel. We're doing this chapter by chapter, and it will be nice for you to listen to the end because I will be sharing the takeouts, or rather my key takeouts from this chapter that we'll be reading today at the end. Also, kindly share this with someone else, subscribe to this channel, and click the notification bell so that you never miss any new recording. So today we are going to be reading chapter 14, but because it is rather a long chapter, I'll be covering it in two parts. So today I'm going to be reading from verse 1 to 23, and I'll be reading it from the NLT version and sharing my lessons at the end. So kindly stick to the end. So this is the story here, or rather this is where we are at in this story. The Philistines have many soldiers that cannot even be counted. They have set a camp in the north, set a camp in the west, and set a camp in the south. And basically, the Israelites are surrounded. These Israelites that are surrounded are only 600 people. They're not many, they're only 600. Of these 600, only 2 people have weapons. That is Saul and his son Jonathan. As in, you can see how bad they are. Their enemy is horrible. Their probability of winning here is like really bad. Anyway, let's read and see what happens in this chapter. He says, one day, Jonathan said to his armor bearer, I don't know whether it's one day after they had been put in the middle there for so long and they're just like, oh, they're hopeless. So Jonathan is like, you armor bearer, let's do something. I'm like, what armor are you even bearing? There are only 2 weapons in this whole camp. Anyway, he says, come on, let's go over to where the Philistines have their outpost. But Jonathan did not tell his father what he was doing. Meanwhile, Saul and his 600 men were camped on the outskirts of Gibeah, around the pomegranate tree at Migron. It was only one tree. Anyway, among Saul's men was Ahijah the priest, who was wearing the ephod, the priestly vest. Ahijah, the son of Ichabod's brother, Ahitub, son of Phinehas, son of Eli, the priest of the Lord, who had served at Shiloh. We're just basically being shown how this guy ended up being the priest. It has come from, you remember Eli the priest, and then there was his grandchild Ichabod, like that, until we got this guy called Ahijah. No one realized that Jonathan had left the Israelite camp. To reach the Philistines' outpost, Jonathan had to go down between 2 rocky cliffs that were called Bozez and Sene. The cliff on the north was in front of Michmash, and the one on the south was in front of Geba. Let's go across the outpost of these pagans, Jonathan said to his armor bearer. Perhaps the Lord will help us. For nothing, I love this verse. Perhaps the Lord will help us. For nothing can hinder the Lord. He can win battle whether he has many warriors or only a few. Now this is faith. As in, this is such great faith in the predicaments that they were in. They only had 600 men and they only had 2 weapons. So Jonathan is like, perhaps the Lord will help us because nothing can hinder him. And he can win a battle whether he has many warriors or he only has a few. Then the armor bearer says, do what you think is best. The armor bearer replied, I am with you completely, whatever you decide. All right then, Jonathan told him, we will cross over and let them see us. If they say to us, stay where you are, or we will kill you, then we will stop and not go to them. But if they say, come on up and fight, then we will go up. That will be the Lord's sign that he will help us defeat them. When the Philistines saw them coming, they shouted, look, the Hebrews are crawling out of their holes. Then the men from the outpost shouted to Jonathan and said, come on up here and we will teach you a lesson. So of course this was like the sign that God was going to rescue them. So come on and climb right behind me, Jonathan said to his armor bearer, for the Lord will help us defeat them. So they climbed up using both hands and feet, and the Philistines fell before Jonathan, and his armor bearer killed those who came behind them. They killed some 20 men in all. Please note, these guys only have one weapon. Hata sijui huyu ababera anaua watu na nini. I don't even know what they are using at this point. They killed some 20 men in total, and all their bodies were scattered all over half an acre. Suddenly, panic broke into the Philistines' army. As in, how are you panicking, number one, and you have like many warriors? But anyway, panic broke because of the Lord. But in the camp and in the field, including even in the outposts and raiding parties. And then an earthquake struck, and everyone was terrified. So Saul's lookout in Gibeah of Benjamin saw the strange sight. The vast army of Philistines began to melt away in every direction. Call the roll and find out who's missing, Saul ordered. And they checked and they found that Jonathan and his armor bearer were gone. Then Saul shouted to Ahijah, bring the ephod here. For at that time Ahijah was wearing the ephod in front of the Israelites. But while Saul was talking to the priests, the confusion in Philistines' camp grew louder and louder. So Saul said to the priests, never mind, let's get going. Then Saul and his men rushed out to the battle and found the Philistines killing each other. The Philistines are killing each other, you guys. There was a terrible confusion everywhere. Even the Hebrews who had previously gone over to the Philistines' army revolted and joined in with Saul, Jonathan, and the rest of the Israelites. Likewise, the men of Israel who were hiding in the hill country of Ephraim joined to chase when they saw the Philistines running away. So the Lord saved Israel that day, and the battle continued to rage even beyond Bath Aven. As in, seriously, two guys have taken. I think faith is such an amazing thing. Faith is such an amazing thing. You just need to take a step of faith. This Jonathan guy and what is his name? And his armor bearer took a step of faith, and Jonathan was like, you know what? God can save with many and with few. And look at what has happened. God has actually saved them. Anyway, one of my favorite verses in this chapter is the end of verse 6. Nothing can hinder the Lord from saving by many or by few. If you don't find that encouraging, Aki, I don't know what can encourage you. Mimi sijui, I don't know what can encourage you. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you need God's saving, but looking at all your options, none can be a solution? I have found myself in such situations often. Let me share one. There's a time in business when I think just at the beginning of 2020, when I was 2 million in debt. I had so much debt, you guys, I didn't even know what to do with myself. I had just moved back my office to the house, something I considered a failure at that time, but now I no longer do. And I felt like such a loser. When I considered all my options, I didn't see a way in which God could save me. I had no unpaid invoices, no one owed me any substantial amount of money, and there was no business coming through. And then to make matters worse, 3 months into the year, COVID-19 happens, and even the little hope that I had was lost. Not only did I have 2 million in debt, but now I had 3 furnished apartments that needed rent. The hotels closed down, the airports closed down, and I honestly did not know how God would save me. I, however, kept the faith. I kept confessing to myself and to anyone who could listen, who cared to listen to me, that I would have my debts paid by the end of 2020. But honestly, did I know how? Oh, I didn't know how. So let me tell you what God did. First, one of my landlords told me to not pay rent for a foreseeable future until things got better. I didn't pay rent in that house for almost more than 6 months. Second, my other landlord reduced my rent significantly. That word. And then my third landlord told me to pay whenever I got the money, even if it meant the following year. So rents were sorted. Maybe not paid, but they were sorted. Then because the hotels were closed and the airports were closed, all the guests that were in hotels started looking for furnished apartments because they couldn't stay in hotels anymore and they could not leave the country because the airport was closed. And just like that, I had guests staying in all my apartments from April all the way to the end of that year. So rents were sorted for real. Then one of my clients merged with another client and they needed to rebrand. One of the companies that I do branding for bought another company, or rather they merged with another company. And that meant that they needed to rebrand. They needed to rebrand all, I think 17 vehicles needed to be rebranded. All their 8 huge offices in different towns needed to be rebranded. And that was a massive contract. As a matter of fact, I think it was the biggest contract I had ever gotten since I started my business in 2011. So you can imagine how big that contract was. I was so busy in 2020, I hardly stayed in the same county for more than a week. Also, so that is one of the ways that my debts were sorted, because now I had so much business. When people were at home, I had so much business. When companies understood that I didn't have cash flow, so that means they actually gave me almost like 70% down payment for me to do the job. Like I had so much business, it was unbelievable. Again, I had a car loan. One of the loans and the debts that I had was my car loan. By January 2020, I could barely afford to pay for that car loan. And the bank called and they wanted to repossess my car. But that was put into a halt because of COVID. I mean, the fact that COVID hit the economy so badly meant that the bank stopped harassing people with the loans for almost a whole year. They didn't actually harass us. By the end of that year, I had so much business and so much money that I had paid more than 1.5 million of the debts that I owed. And when I went to the bank to clear the car loan, it had reduced by half. My car loan had been cut by half. And up to date, the bank or even I cannot explain who paid for it. We still cannot figure it out who paid for it, but the thing is, the loan was paid by half, and I paid the rest of the half, and I walked out of that bank completely debt-free. Let me tell you, nothing can hinder the Lord from saving us, with many or by few. Not even the economy of this country. Nothing can hinder the Lord. Nothing stands in God's way. Not debts, not COVID, not bad economy, not the crazy price of fuel and the crazy price of cooking oil and gas, not the current drought in the country. Nothing can hinder the Lord from saving. Aki, all it requires is faith. Faith like that of Jonathan, who said, you guys, this cannot be our position. Where now we are just stuck over here. We can't do anything. Let's go to those guys. The Lord can save us by many and by few. That is all it takes. Faith. Faith, radical, crazy faith. This is my belief that nothing can move me and nothing can move me from this. I truly believe that God has 1,000,001 ways to save me. None of those ways that God has is dependent on anything that I have power to control. None of those ways is dependent or hindered by the economy of this country or the economy of this nation or the economy of the world, because his riches are not in this kingdom. They're not of this kingdom. And in any case, God owns everything in the world. He owns the world and everything in it. So he has 1,000,001 ways he can save me, honestly. He does. And nothing can hinder the Lord from saving. All it requires is that we have such faith in him and his capacity and his ability, in his willingness, in his faithfulness, in his powerful capacity to save us. All it needs is that we have faith in God. This is your girl Wakeji Kamore, and this has been Reflections by Wakeji Kamore. See you tomorrow.